To our second session of the day. So as you know, the financial trading market has entered a new phase of innovation that is largely based on artificial intelligence. Multi-asset trading systems have gained in speed and capacity. However, most of this data actually remains unused. AI is the hottest modern technology today, and it provides efficient and highly scalable set of technologies. So how can we use them more efficiently? Here to talk to us about this today is Ilya Sorokin, founder and CEO of Actuator Technologies. Let's give him a warm welcome to the stage. Thank you.
So just a couple of words about Actuator Technologies. We're a technology firm. We're not a brokerage. We've been in business since 2000, so we've pretty much been in this industry since inception. And as a technology company, we're always looking for new innovative trends so we can take advantage of them and use it for our clients. So unless you've been living under a rock, AI has been in forefront of the technology revolution of today, right? So artificial intelligence became the most talked about topic. And so here we'll just talk a little bit about AI. And what is AI? Essentially, it's artificial intelligence, right? So we're trying to teach machines how to imitate, replicate, do what we do, right? So we're basically saying, can we teach a machine to be as smart as we are? And even though it's positioned as a new technology, it's been in existence for over 60 years. Actually, for example, in 1962, IBM computer had won against the checkers grandmaster, and the enthusiasm at the time for the artificial intelligence was so great that IBM stock went up 15% in one day. And that's 1962. So the problem is that our brain is not very simple. We have a very, very complex brain, which is also known as neural networks. Why is it called neural networks? Because we have over 100 billion neurons in our brain, and if that wasn't enough, you actually have 15,000 connections for each neuron. So at the end of the day, it's a hugely complex network that we have in our brain, and it actually doesn't take much energy either compared to computers, which burn energy like crazy. So when we try to imitate our neural networks with something called artificial neural networks, we try to do it in the way we do it, right? But it's not easy. We try, and this is just an example of one of the most popular learning algorithms called backpropagation. That's Google uses it in TensorFlow, that's their product. So as you can see, it's probably not something you would do over the weekend. So it's just a really complex process, and in artificial neural networks, they use this type of algorithms. Well, in the 60s, when enthusiasm was so high for artificial neural networks and artificial intelligence, we all of a sudden realized that it takes tremendous amount of effort to teach a machine how to do something. And so while we as human beings have no problem with spending 25 years probably in the beginning, well, actually all of our life we're learning something, but from the time we're born until we get out of college or something like that, we're intensely learning something. But as the business as human beings, we're impatient to wait 25 years for a machine to learn something, right? So what happened was when we tried to teach the machines in the beginning, that was taking tremendous amount of time, and the task became very simplistic. And so, for the longest time, the artificial intelligence became kind of just an academic field. It's sometimes people refer to hibernation period for artificial intelligence, and until essentially in 1997, where Big Blue, which was another IBM machine, won against Garry Kasparov, which was grandmaster in chess. That kind of woke up the whole world to the fact that artificial intelligence actually now got much more smart. And so we use artificial intelligence network like everything else, like any other technology. It keeps evolving and evolving. But essentially, the way the reason it's kind of started to come back into its own is because we realized that in the 60s, you had computers that couldn't do much, right? So today in your smartphone is can do things that were unimaginable in the 60s. So in the 90s and early 2000s, we just started to throw tremendous amount of processing power, computers, at the old algorithms and try to optimize them and tweak them. So, but yet we realized that our brain is actually so much smarter than machines that we can make. So we started to kind of change the learning pattern. We can say, can we do a little piece of it? Can we do something smaller and teach a machine to do a certain specific operation? And you had terminology like machine learning and deep learning. And the deep learning became a kind of term for resolving very complex problems when you try to throw artificial intelligence at it. So in 15 minutes presentation, I'm not going to go into the differences of this, but those are the terms you'll hear. A lot of times people ask, what is machine learning? How is it different from artificial intelligence? Or what is deep learning? So it's just pretty much the same things, but on a different level. Once we started to divide it into smaller components, one of the biggest challenges is that it's not only the algorithms that you have to define for a artificial intelligence, but once the algorithms are there, now for each individual problem, you have to do a problem modeling. So we create it's an individual project for each problem you're trying to resolve. And today, artificial intelligence is, while it seems simple, it's in the way it perceives problems, it's actually not simple at all. And we are, the biggest obstacle is that how do we teach the systems to be more efficient, to be faster, to know better? And in that regard, you have two different types of artificial intelligence. You have supervised learning and unsupervised learning. And supervised learning is kind of straightforward. It basically means that you have a bunch of experts who use the system. So if you wanted the system to learn how to cure cancer, you get 500 experts in oncology, and you try to pick their brains so the system will learn. But the limitation is that at the end of the day, it will only be as smart as the cumulative knowledge of the experts that were teaching the system. The unsupervised artificial intelligence basically says that I'm not going to tell machine what to do. I'm let it learn on its own, right? So you throw a lot of stuff at it. So in the case of cancer, you would basically throw a lot of medical records at the artificial intelligence system, and it would churn and churn. It kind of learns and evolves, and eventually it will come back and say there is a disease. I don't know what it's called. It might not even call it cancer, and says here is the diagnosis, and it might have many more diagnoses or different ones that the expert system has, because it will find things that we don't find as humans. So in 2015, the company DeepMind that Google acquired, which is their artificial intelligence arm at this point in time, they decided, how do we show that it's smart enough? So they build now going checkers, chess, now we go to a game called Go, which is very popular in Asia. It's a very complex game. It's almost like a cultural game in Asia. And they said, let's teach a system and to play Go. In DeepMind, they didn't have a single person who was an expert in Go, master level. So, but yet they, threw the bunch of games at the system and it learned how to play. So eventually when they had a tournament in South Korea against the Grandmaster of Go, the system won, 3 times out of 4. And when they were analyzing the way the computer played, it's actually made moves that were totally not human. It made moves that didn't make sense to the humans, but yet it made those moves and it won the games, right? So the system, one of the huge advantages of artificial intelligence as you apply it, especially unsupervised, is that it actually evolves and learns on its own, and it can come up with solutions and direction that you don't anticipate. And that's what makes it so intriguing. The other part of it is that we're kind of living in a world of huge amounts of data. If you talk to IBM experts or HP experts, just about anybody, they say we're flooding, we're drowning in data, because today, even like you're walking around with your phone, you create a tremendous amount of data. You take pictures, you take movies, you chat. All of that goes into a data pool. And so essentially somebody analyzes that data. Like Google interested in what your buying habits are. So if you do a search, how do I buy something, the next time you log in, you'll get all the pop-ups that said, look here and look there. So they extract your information. But now we also looking at IoTs, Internet of Things. We're talking about smart TVs, smart refrigerators. So you have all the sensors that send data into the space. But we have, at this point, have a crisis because all the data we cannot analyze. The data is growing exponentially, but our methodology of processing data or indexing data is linear. So with every year, that gap goes bigger and bigger. So we have a kind of a huge amounts of untapped potential, which is data. So the artificial intelligence obviously doesn't have the limitations that we have, and so it can process data continuously. And in financial ecosystem, we have tremendous amount of data, right? It's a financial data, but it's not only financial data. The AI, because we have so much data in fintech, this is kind of just a small sample of all the things that you use AI for today. And most of us actually don't realize it. We kind of sit there and say, yeah, AI, but in reality, it's actually moving so much faster than anybody realizes. It's probably the most active trend in technology today. And it's evolving tremendously. It brings huge benefits for some companies. And so the problem is, how do I get involved, right? Because AI is not trivial. It's not simple. It's like, if I'm a business owner, yeah, AI sounds good. What do I do, right? And so on one hand, you have this whole now group of professionals called data scientists, which are highly paid and very in huge demand, which actually massage the data for AI systems to be able to process. Then you have another very expensive group of specialists that do modeling of artificial networks, and that by itself is a huge task, and it also sometimes takes, if it's a complex problem, takes months, sometimes years to do. So, as everything else, it's a new technology, very complex, very active. So as such, it creates a huge opportunity to get involved early, to get now, and kind of evolve with it. So the fintech is using AI for a simple reason. Just in 2019, we had almost $138 billion invested in fintech. And so it's a hugely capitalized field, and it's always looking for the next big thing, because we're talking about money, we're talking about financial services, we want something big, great, revolutionary. So the AI fintech is very much invested in AI technologies. There are a lot of different directions, as I showed in the previous ecosystem. There's a whole direction of operational efficiency that people, how do I streamline my operations, fraud protection, DOS attacks prevention, you name it. You have, the whole legal ecosystem where you now have AI analyzing contracts, creating contracts. You have a speech recognition, which we're all using with Alexa. So basically, there's a lot of directions where AI is, but somehow it's not necessarily, while it's revolutionizing a lot of stuff, it's not on the forefront somehow. We hear about AI, but we use Siri on our iPhones. We don't think about it when I'm texting something. Now it's smart enough that it actually almost predicts what's the next word. So right now we can write the whole sentence just picking the choices that the phone gives us without even thinking, how does it know where am I going with this, right? So the AI is constantly evolving and changing. So in trading, where we are in our space, it's kind of a no-brainer. On one hand, we always, look at a lot of data. You walk around this hall, you'll see tons of charts and, trends analysis and God knows what. It's like, in order for you to trade, you have to analyze the data in some form or shape. So when you use AI, it increases the speed of operations, increases speed of trading. It's one of the biggest issues in forecasting, for example, is that everything is interconnected, right? In forecasting, so AI gives you an opportunity to look at things that you don't know are related. So if you have if you have a flood in Taiwan and all of a sudden Apple stock goes down, if you do just this simple technical analysis, nothing happened. What's going on? But turn out that there is a chip factory, it's got flooded, now there's a shortage of chips, now so you basically, as a human being, we have all these different facts and events that are interconnected and affect financial results, but we're not capable of processing that much data and analyze all the relationships within all these events. It's actually eliminates human errors. In trading specifically, we all know, like we have running a trading platform for 20 years, you have people come on board, they'll open a demo account, and before they're like the smartest person since Bill Gates, right? They're making a fortune. As soon as you change it to a real account, you look at their activity and they're like losing all their money because the emotions come into play, the errors comes into play. You all of a sudden have a different mentality when you deal with real money versus fake money. So the system doesn't care all about this, right? So you basically eliminate human errors, you eliminate emotions. It definitely improves accuracy. And it also gives you performance in real time. But what's most interesting about artificial intelligence in that regard is that it's constantly learning, right? So it's evolving. It's not, when you build the EA, for example, for trading, you said, well, I found the great idea, I'm going to write an algorithm and I'm just going to use it, right? So, you write it, you implement it, algorithm is running. So it's until you lose money, you said, shucks, that didn't work, something went wrong. So you go back and you redo it. Now, the AI doesn't do that. What it does is with every, it's constantly learning. So with every move, every activity, it's learning and evolving. So it uses its own errors to teach itself, right? So it's a 24/7 self-learning environment which humans cannot accommodate. After all, we sleep. The machine does not, right? So, but it actually has a built-in learning mechanism which allows the system to constantly correct itself and get better and better. So we talked a little bit about forecasting. Forecasting is kind of a main activity before you do anything. It's kind of a focal point. If you don't forecast properly where the markets are going to move or changes, what events are going to happen, trading becomes kind of almost gambling, right? Because you try to predict what's going to happen and act based on it. And it's basically from crystal ball, from other science. We always go through predictive mechanism and techniques and analysis. And if you go to Amazon and you type in in the book section financial technical analysis, you'll get about 3,000 books, which basically, and every one of those books is trying to tell you how to do technical financial analysis and how to predict the market trends and what's going to happen. But the fact that we have 3,000 books, and probably if you go back 20 years, it also was 3,000 books back then. So it's actually we're constantly trying to find a silver bullet. How do we predict something? Well, with AI, you have a much more accurate mechanism of predicting. It's first of all, it analyzes all this data, and it's almost like a vacuum. You give it access to data, so it will process the data, and whatever new data comes in, it will add and it continue to learn and look at the trends. And basically, a lot of times it comes up with the results you totally don't know. And a lot of times you'll hear people talk about AI being a black box, because it comes up with, you throw something into a black box, it comes up with a result. And you say, how do you know? And a lot of times, even the people who design the AI, who actually design the system, they'll say, I have no idea. It has its mind of its own, literally does. And so it will find relationship and dependencies that we as humans just totally miss. We don't know that it's there. And we, in Actuator, we experiment with AI. So, for example, we'll try to predict the movement of, dollar USD, and we'll look at historical data, and then say, what? Why don't we throw, historical data from 20 other pairs in the same, Euro USD analysis? Well, surprisingly enough, we get much more accurate prediction, even though, essentially, if you look at the sum of the pairs, it would be very strange, and you would not think that they would affect the price movement of a specific instrument, but it does. And if you take 50 instruments, you get even more accurate results. So the system itself finds dependencies, finds some kind of positive trends and takes them. Then it's constantly learning, as I already said. It's constantly learning, so it's totally iterative in its process, and it gets better and better. It has interesting part. It has no inherent limitation, because what happens is when you try to do forecasting today, you use some kind of a system. I don't care if it's an Excel spreadsheet or some kind of a very sophisticated system, but that system actually presents a very interesting aspect. It's a limitation. You cannot go beyond what that system allows you to do. So AI kind of eliminates that limit. If you use an Excel spreadsheet, if it doesn't let you do something, you're not going to do it because you don't have the tools for it. AI doesn't use any specific system to do it, so it actually zooms right through it. And in the end, you have a more profitable trading. We're, basically emphasizing, I'm running out of time, so it's basically emphasizing the same thing. You have ability for AI to be much more prolific in forecasting than humans are. Well, in Actuator, we kind of took on the project called NeuroTrader, and we said, how do we get into a paradigm shift in terms of trading? What if I, instead of looking at all this data and trying to analyze it and make a decision how to trade, what if I give you a replica of yourself? What if we give you a trading avatar who is smart enough, and you come in and you don't look in charts, you don't look at anything, you have a system basically tells you, this is the trend, this is what you should do, and this is where the market is going to be. So the initial reaction, of course, you're not going to trust it, right? Because it's like, no way, I'm smarter than that. But as the time goes on, you get much better results. And again, the system will actually analyze a lot of data, and it's actually will learn. So if you look at the accuracy of predictions, if you look at profitability of trading, you will see constantly improving results, even though we didn't change anything. The system will change it itself. I'm just kind of, so right now what we decided to do, we decided to create an all social, which is a social trading, intelligent social trading system. We said what we're going to do, we're going to create a bunch of AI avatars who are going to trade. We're going to teach them, and we're going to trade, make them trade. We put them on a social trading platform, so when you go in, you'll get a bunch of avatars who are you're going to see all of their transactions, all of the profits that they generated, what markets they're trading. So it's a normal social trading environment where you come in and you try to pick a leader that you copy and follow. This way you can say, I can actually follow an AI NeuroTrader that will, and see if you can get the same results or the same profits as the system brings to. So again, it's one of the things we did. Just we went back to the basics, and we instead of not only created an AI model, but we actually rewritten some of the algorithms. This very heavy method I showed you. So we have some newer algorithms that are much faster than what exists today. We can process huge amounts of data, and it learns and evolves. So just to conclude about, majority of people, if you ask to business owners or entrepreneurs, if you've heard of AI, they will say, yeah, I can kind of see the benefit potentially of it. And, 65% of them said, there is the potential change. But only, 1/3 of the companies are trying to take advantage of it, because it's like everything new, you have to figure out how to do it, where to start. So the suggestion is just pick something little, start with something, look into it. If you're in technology field, look into it. If you're in the business field, look into it, because the AI is going to change your business no matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if it's your customer support, if you're a chief dealer and you're doing risk management, if you're doing sales, you're going to have AI as a part of your world before you can blink an eye. So just don't ignore it, look at it, see how you can use it, what makes sense, and dive in. Thank you.